Hey, good morning. Welcome to Stony Nose Farm. We got a hot tip for you this morning, how to grow big onions. And you just stick around and we're gonna give you some information. An old farmer told me this, so I know it's a hot tip. So when getting ready to plant your onions in a raised row, you wanna hill up the dirt at the string line to about 1.5 inches above the rest of the garden. I usually use just a good old-fashioned garden rake. Hill it up, kind of flatten it off, and then I'm ready to go. When I plant these onions, I plant them about 5 inches apart because these onions are going to grow and they're going to grow right into one another. So I poke a little hole, put either the onion set or the little seedling, the onion plant right in the hole, tuck them in and just bury them right there. All right, so the reason you put them on a hill is as these onions grow, they want to expand, and each onion is trying to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden they're pushing the dirt against one another and they just kind of restrict themselves. So this old farmer told me, plant them on a hill. Everybody seems to know that as onions are growing, you scrape the dirt away from the onions so that as they get bigger, they have freedom to expand. But if you're in a flat ground and you're starting to scrape this dirt away, every time you scrape it away, the rain comes along and fills it back in. But when you're starting out on a mound, you're starting out on high ground, you scrape it away and it stays away. And a lot of times you don't even need to scrape it away. The rains, weeding, pulling out the weeds and stuff, that's enough to keep these onions growing great, big, and strong. They won't tip over because you're not disturbing their roots, and you'll have big onions at the end of the season. Okay, so here we've got our onions about a week after we've kicked them over. We kicked them over so that they would all kind of mature at the same rate. So this is what we're at right before we're ready to harvest. We'll be harvesting them today. I want to just show you why we planted them on a hill, okay? Look at these onions, how close they are together. They're about 4.5 inches apart, and they're all tight. They're right tight to it. They don't have much room to grow. Next year, I'll plant them 5 inches apart. So you can see also they're sticking about halfway out of the ground. And if they would have been on the flat ground, I would have had to dig that out all summer long. And this way, the dirt just kind of eroded right off. If you add another 1.5 inches, 2 inches of dirt on top of this, they'd be right to the top of the onions. So we're ahead of the game. We've got all that dirt kind of removing itself, letting the onions get really, really big. So, so this is where we're at. And you'll see some of these onions, some of the onions have big tops. And you'll see a lot of missing onions in my row. That's because I harvest the big tops when I'm making salsa, and the big tops don't keep as well. So that's why you've got so many missing onions. That whole row was here, and you can see how much salsa I've made over the summer. So, so now we're gonna get ready to harvest these onions. We're gonna dig them out and we're gonna lay them in the dirt. Well, today's the day we're gonna dig onions. We kicked onions over about a week ago, and they got a chance to kind of start slowing down and shutting down. And now we're gonna dig them. And when we dig onions, we've got some choices. We can dig them with a shovel, we can dig them with a fork, we can dig them with a garden spade. And they call it a garden spade because it's supposed to be used in a garden. If we're gonna shovel manure, we'd use a pitchfork. If we're gonna shovel gravel, we'd use a gravel shovel, but we're using a garden spade. It has wider tines, so you're not liable to slip through the onion, and it's designed for this. So that's what we're gonna do. So most people, or a lot of people, I'm always about efficiency. So I like to do it the fastest way. So a lot of people go like this, and then they beach down, and then they pull an onion out, and then they do this, and they stand back up, and they pull an onion out. And I do it all in one step, mass production. By the way, don't pull an onion out without digging it. It kind of wrecks this area, and they don't dry down very well. So you always want to spade them out, and you don't have to do much. Just tip them just a little bit. See that? They'll come right out. And I go down the entire row. Don't worry about the stems. They're gonna get thrown away anyway. Look at that. I don't bend down a bit. I'm getting to be old, so I can save my bending for the important stuff. See that? I got 2 onions at a time. The gap there is where I gave those onions to the neighbors. The neighbors love me. See that? We have 2 more there. And I don't even waste time walking all the way back down to the other end. I just toss them on the dry dirt, and we're gonna leave them set a day or maybe 2. You can go as many as 3. If it's wet weather, yeah, let's get them picked up. But you remember, you picked the day that it was gonna be dry and sunny. If you had a choice, see how easy they come out? And we're not gonna do anything to them at all. We're just gonna leave them set just like that. Don't even try pulling the dirt off of them because they're so big they won't even all fit there. So, see how quick that was? Only bent down once. Look at one huge onion. Look at that, how size of that one. So that's it. So we're gonna leave them sit there a day, maybe all day today and part of the day tomorrow. And then we're gonna come along and we're gonna clean them off. Okay, so this is the day after we pulled the onions. This happened to be the white onions. And so the reason we leave them set for a day or 2 is we want this dirt to dry up a little bit. And if you wait, if you don't wait, it's all muddy. But look at how it just kind of falls right off. And just rub it gently, not too hard, because you don't want to wreck this skin. This skin is pretty fragile yet. So do that. And then we're gonna take it down to the storage area. We're gonna store it in a warm, dry, dark place. And we're gonna store it upside down. We'll show you that again in another segment. And then after about 2-3 weeks, we bring it out of that storage, cut the top off, cut the roots off, and we maybe take off the loose paper like that a little bit, not too much. It's still drying down, and it gets to be pretty clean. And this has really got about 2-3 weeks to go in drying time yet. And maybe perhaps one more layer of this paper will come off very easily. Don't force it off. If you force it off, you're going to expose some raw onion underneath, and it's not going to store very well. So don't ever force the paper off. Just gently peel it off. I know it's tempting to peel this off, but just leave it alone. Just leave it alone, hang it upside down, it'll be just fine. So we're going to, we'll show you the method that I use. It's a frugal method. I always look for the cheapest way of doing something. I didn't build any fancy racks. But to dry it down with these things hanging straight down is kind of neat. Well, guess what, guys? It's the next morning and we're ready to put the onions away. We talked about putting them into the grain bin, a change of plans. We finally got our rack completed in the garage, and so I'm going to kind of show you what's going on. Most of the time, my garage is pretty clean. I like it so that I can pull my pickup in and there's room to get in and out. But, you know, for about a month and a half, we've got to get these onions dried. And so my daughter actually came up with this idea, a rack that folds up off the wall, and I'll quick set it up here. It just is supported by some portable supports. So we set this thing up. It's plenty strong. We've tested it out, and so it's a real quick deal. We'll leave it set up for about a month and a half until the onions have dried out, and so that's the first layer. Second layer, I've got these cool Velcro strips. Make sure these special little sticks don't get lost. And that supports the second layer. It just hinges up from these little shelf brackets. The only thing different about this is we put the shelf brackets upside down so that the onions don't roll off. So that's the sure-proof method of keeping everything where it belongs. I've been in the position where you pull into the garage and there's onions on the floor, and so this should keep that from happening. Last one, and nice and solid. They hold a lot of weight, and this is where we're going to store the onions. So remember we talked about storing the white onions in the grain bin, and they're dry enough now to move up to here. And of course, the yellow onions that we pulled the other day, well, unfortunately, remember I said, hey, pull them on a dry day? Well, 0% chance the other day, and with a 20% the following day. Said, well, whoever gets rain with 20%, not too many, right? Well, guess what? We had 20% all over the yard this morning, so the onions got wet, but don't worry about it. We're gonna put them up here, dry them out inside, and we'll just turn the fan on. Mother Nature knows how to take care of stuff, so not a big worry. Thankfully, we got all the dirt rubbed off of them, and so they're pretty dirt free. You just need to dry out. So we're gonna load up the racks. Well, we're loading the rack. This is a kind of a new project here, but we like to store our onions upside down, only because the moisture drains out and it drains down into these stems, and it does a really nice job of starting to dry them down quickly. If you got them all bunched up or tied together, there's a lot of moisture there to give off, and so we do them this way. And they're going to be sitting here for probably 3 weeks before we actually peel some of this dry skin off. So it's going to take a while, but Mother Nature will just take care of us just fine. These are a little wetter than I wanted them to be because I said we got that 20% rain all over the yard this morning. Got about 3/4 of an inch. It was a great rain. So I'm not a complainer. Whenever it rains, I don't complain. We make do because we love the rain. So again, these will be here about 3 weeks. We'll take the skins off and clean them up. And after that, we'll probably let them dry out again with the skins being quite a bit cleaner. And we'll let them go for another couple weeks until they start, the stems kind of have to seal off. We'll cut the tops off, and then that wound will kind of seal that onion up for the winter. The onions are done. It's that time of year where we can finish up and put everything away. We left our onions dry in the rack. When the skins got nice and crispy, they were about 3 to 4 weeks into drying time without the stems on, and we put them in storage bins and put them in my garage. The garage never gets below freezing. It's always about 35 to 45 degrees out there. We keep the separate onions separated by type, and we don't like to pack them too deep. And if you keep them that way, if you dry them up properly, those onions should last about 5, maybe 6 months. When they start getting a little soft and they'll start growing a little bit, we usually cut them up and freeze them real quick before we lose them all. So that's how we do onions here at Stony Knolls. So this is Jack signing off at Stony Knolls Farm.